Good afternoon. This is Thomas at the Prof Writer channel, and I wanted to share a short interview I did today with a good friend and former student, Matt Eichman. Matt was a instrumental figure in the active living residence learning community. That is a organization I founded 10 years ago here at Appalachian State University. The community has always been good at helping students advance as a group, mature, and also experience the wonderful outdoor lifestyle we have here in the mountains in Northwest North Carolina. So here it is, short interview with Matt about all of his experiences as part of the active living residence learning community at Appalachian State University.
When you were here, the floor was still full, right?
That is correct. Yeah. Yep. We had, I think that the entire floor, every single room, everybody was part of the RLC. There was a great positive energy with it. Granted, this is, prior to everything that's going on right now, but at the same time, it just felt like there was a heavy enthusiasm to take part in it, to meet new people, to get outside of your comfort zone. Even if you were and you claimed yourself to be an introverted kind of person, like me, for example. I was a closet introverted person coming into the RLC, and the first day it scared me. It really did, because I meeting new people, a lot of new people, and these people I'm going to be living with for the rest of the year. So there's a lot going on. But I will tell you, if anyone were to be hesitant about putting their name in for something like this, I encourage them not to be. Very hesitant with this, because it was literally the biggest life-changing experience I've ever had, because it got me out of my comfort zone. It pushed me to do more, to meet people, to just strike up conversations, maybe to go places where I haven't been before. And I mean, there's a reason why throughout my entire collegiate career, out of all 7 semesters that I've taken part in, 5 of them were with the RLC.
Yeah.
So yeah. So,
and remember, tell the story too. The progression of RLC for you wasn't just when you were first in there as a first-year student, then you went on to other things with them more.
Yeah, and after the freshman year, my freshman year with the RLC, I was very adamant about returning as a mentor for my sophomore year, and I'll tell you, every year just got better and better for me. I was able to build friendships that I still hold to this day. Outside of college, now that I'm about 4 years removed. So I'm very thankful for that. And I still talk to them about it too. We go over all of our memories that we've made on the floor, and outside of the floor, just developing as young human beings, and it still puts a smile on our faces. So I mean, it's definitely unforgettable. The kind of things you go through, and you learn from so many different people from different backgrounds with different viewpoints, and you do it in a respectful manner. You're able to sit down and have a good intellectual conversation with somebody, and not feel like that your opinion is lower than theirs or anything like that. So it's definitely a great environment, a positive environment, and people who generally do care about you. But again, you have to be able to get outside of that comfort zone, like I said, if you want to get the most out of it. So it's a matter of taking that stride to do it.
And then we have to say, what happened after the mentor? What came next?
Yeah. So after the following year, my junior year, I did have my first RA experience, which, by the way, I wouldn't have become an RA if it wasn't for my experience as a mentor in the active living RLC. I'll tell you that. After that, I knew that after I had gone through my first RA year, I wanted to return. There was no question. And that's because that's what I've always wanted to do ever since my freshman year ended, is I wanted to kind of take on a leadership role and just build upon that, in a nice steady progression. And being able to return to the RLC for my last semester at college, it was an ultimate dream come true. And I do mean that, because it allowed me to continue the traditions that you have taught us, that we have been, taking part in, and just encouraging those to be involved, because there, even during my year when I was hesitant to take on a lot of the challenges that we did together as a group, I wanted to kind of have that same influence on those who I was overseeing. So I've had the pleasure of having great mentors along the way to kind of push me, you being one of them, and it allowed me to kind of take the reins confidently and try to put a positive mindset into people that maybe in a particular instances where they didn't feel like they had any kind of positivity, and especially during college when you're away for the first time, it can get hectic. I take it for me. I was 9 hours away. I was living in Pennsylvania my freshman year, and I come down to this small North Carolina town. So it was scary. So if I can get people to feel confident and build relationships that they maybe never thought they would have built coming into college, then I felt like I would have done my job appropriately. And it was a blast. I'll tell you. It was not to say it was easy all the time, but it definitely at the end of the day, I was very satisfied with what route I was taking, and I had no regrets about it whatsoever.
I'm glad the friendships were formed, and I think the maturity, what it just hit me is that if someone could ever talk about a career progression, how many people would have had that much career progression just in school? Because you came from an RLC member to the mentor up to being a resident assistant. That's clearly a progression of maturity and growth, and it was all still part of Appalachian State Housing,
right?
Which is really something I'm such a big fan of, is what housing really is for students. And sometimes I think it's overlooked in an academic sense, but as part of the entire experience, who knows how big that piece can be.
Absolutely. I definitely think at times it can be taken for granted. But again, the point I want to kind of come back around to, especially with first year students, is if you're living in the residence halls, and especially being a part of an RLC, a learning community, you really, I like to think of it as a commitment to you trying to push yourself to be a better person, as opposed to just going to live on a particular floor and just that's where you're going to live. This is truly a community. And I don't want anyone to ever take something like that for granted, because I didn't, and because of that I had a better experience. You get out what you put in, is my personal belief. And I encourage everyone to participate. Even if at first a particular event or meeting might not necessarily be to your liking, do it. Okay, you never know what you can get out of it, who you're going to meet because of it. The goal is to learn something new every single day, and to try to share the knowledge that you build with others. And I'm stand by my position on my involvement with the RLC, starting from my first year up until I graduated, was a nice steady progression of me learning stuff every single day. It never stopped. I will say that. Okay, I learned from my own residents, along the way. I didn't know everything, and they taught me a lot of valuable lessons, because like I said, they came from different backgrounds that maybe I didn't understand. So I would ask those questions. I would want to get to know them as a person. I mean, outside of just my job, I wanted to, I became an extroverted kind of person and just want to care about those who live on my floor. And that means a lot to people. So, I'm so thankful for everything. Because
I'm so, happy to hear your experience. And over the years, by the way, I was co-founder, or really the founder of Active Living 10 years ago now. And, there's been so many individuals that have come through the program, and it's amazing now to see you and others as the years go by. You're in careers and lives and everything, but it doesn't take but a second to get a student to reflect back on Active Living Residence Learning Community and have a positive feedback, of what that meant in their, I always used to call it to my students, the toolkit. If you're building a toolkit, active living, it puts into the toolkit. So.
Oh, absolutely. I will tell you that I'm living here in the Raleigh area. I run into some people every now and then who I've shared my active living experience with, because they, I knew they were in their area, and I sometimes just bump into them, just not even planning anything. And every single time active living has been brought up.
Wow.
Some kind of memory. If it's something we've shared, if it's something we haven't shared, something I didn't even know, beforehand, it's amazing. It leaves an impact on you.
Yeah, I'm happy because I believe this. I, as an administrator, I'm a faculty member and administrator for active living, and I'm now, they call it chair of the leadership committee. But we can form the structure, and we can put it in place, and I can sure be part of that through some events and other. But all the real stories I hear are what the students built among themselves. As you became people, like you said, respecting each other, talking through some ideas. That's sort of organic, and that's always sort of what grew off the floor is the students. And a lot of times you've seen this, students leave, it's time to move on off campus. Many move together, and move into their next living situation together. So that always made me believe it really worked well. If students decide to opt in with themselves going forward, then I know they did care about themselves.
Correct. And I will say this, for anyone who's going to be watching this in the future, if there's one thing that's going to be your best friend in terms of just it's succeeding in your college career, but in the RLC in general, no matter what floor you live on, doesn't matter, any residence hall whatsoever, sit out in the lobby, right? You just don't sit in your room all the time. Yeah. The moment you take a seat in that couch out in that lobby, somebody is going to be bound to come up, ask you how your day is, and you're going to get a conversation started without even having you to do any kind of work whatsoever. Yeah. Just take the initiative to make yourself be present, to be known, to let people know that, I live on this floor. I share this floor with you. That you never know what could happen on any given day. That's something that I did every single year, whether if I was at first year, a mentor, an RA, I always sat out in the lobby, whether it was doing homework, just chilling there, whatever it was. And a lot of the friendships that I mentioned to you that I've made because of that, or because of my experiences there, were made because I took that initiative to do that. Yeah. It might sound silly right now, but something as simple as doing that can just take you places that you wouldn't even imagine.
Well, I appreciate that. And you will know that as the communities change and these new buildings are constructed, and this, they're more designed to be isolated in a way. You're going to have to work a little harder to find that common community area. And so we've had that in our building, and you've been here, that we share community. And for now, I've decided that, that active living will remain here because it does have that community feel to it.
Absolutely.
So we're going to do that, but it's really good to think about what it is and why it matters. And especially now, I think young people probably more than ever, life is so complex right now, and it's difficult, and there's unknowns and stressors. So this part you just said, that great advice of get in there and just put yourself out there to make the connection. It's really important.
Yep. You cannot, nothing can ever top the person-to-person interaction. This is just my opinion. But nothing can ever top that in any kind of face-to-face scenario you could put yourself into. I always take it, whether you're comfortable with it or not. Yeah. Because it's something that I never, like I said, I never really was comfortable with starting off my college career, but I stuck with it. I was persistent, and day after day, I felt more comfortable with it. I started to become a people person more and more. Right. And I wouldn't be in my career path I'm in right now as a strength coach if it weren't for that, honestly.
Right. And there's so much, I think I really, just to you and all the other RAs, I have a lot of respect because I've seen it now for so many years. And the complexity of the problems you dealt with was getting more and more pronounced every year, okay? When I started, it was almost like you were a club leader. That's not the case anymore. It's more complex now. There's more personal, social, psychological problems, right?
Correct.
And you dealt with that. So I'm always so thankful to the RAs and also the people on the floor that can support others when they're having those times to help them.
Yep. And again, at the end of the day, you have to be able to take that head start and just discuss these things with people. If you don't talk to anybody, minimal, if anything, will ever get done. So you have to be somebody has to be able to take that initiative to sit down, discuss something, if it's good or bad. If you expect to get to some kind of solution, if there is a problem. So, yep.
So we live in that world, and I'm thankful for housing and for all the students who become RAs. And I sure want to thank you for, your comments on active living. I've always appreciated your friendship. I've always appreciated being able to use you as an example of someone who really, I think, squeezed every drop out of active living that you could.
Tried.
And really took it in and made it. And by the way, every group that came after the other, everybody tried to build and make it bigger and better and stronger. And you were sure clearly part of that.
I always appreciate your words on that matter, Dr. Miller. You had whether you know it or not, I know I've said this to you before, but I will continually say this. You were a huge impact on me to kind of get me to think outside the box. I mean, there were times when I would just come out of my room, you were sitting out there, I would come out and sit down with you. We would talk for, 30 minutes to an hour without even knowing it. And I was just fully invested in it. There's never a moment where if we're having a conversation together, man, I'm bored. You always get me.
Well, so, we do want to think, and if as an academic, that's one thing we want to leave behind with students is, we call it explicate. Can you really look at something from all points of view and really try to take all the different viewpoints out of it, and that's sort of the process. Maybe you're a people person now with your training, and I'm sure that every person you deal with is its own case study, right? And who they are, what's in their head, and how, right? Because you're motivating people. I'm sure what you learned from our time together is really how do you look at another person to try to understand.
It is so challenging to be able to just dissect every single person, but at the end of the day, it's worth it. Because it makes me do my job better, and it gets me to figure out what their motivations are, which are just so vast. They're so different, and it astounds me, but you got to be able to take. You got to be able to, like you said, squeeze every bit you can out of your experience, because if you don't, then you're not gonna get as much out of it. And with going to a college as great as App State, I wanted to squeeze every bit out of it. And this was a great stepping stone to do that. I was just over the moon with my experience that I had, and
And I want to say something. I just here back to the way I think or might look at something differently. I just realized that we are active living, and a lot of that was about the physical. On time, we'd hike up to Howard's Knob, or we'd hike to the windmill, or there were outdoor events. But everything we're talking about isn't that. It's part of it, but all this growth in life is what we're talking about, which is really so much of what active living was, in addition to all the fitness, athletic, outdoor type things we did.
Right. And that's what my initial mindset was when I actually saw it on the website is, active living, my mind immediately went to physical aspect. Little did I know when I started doing everything with the RLC, what all the events we started planning, how much more was just put into it. And that's when it started to become uncomfortable, because I could deal with the physical aspect. I've played multiple sports. I'm always active. It's not a problem for me. But the moment you start kind of seeing how much just social interaction you're going to have, and pushing yourself into a mental capacity that maybe you never even been to before. So it just kind of combining all those elements, it blew me away. And it's no exaggeration. I really hope that people can just be comfortable thinking outside the box and just get a little uncomfortable, because tell you right now, no one ever grew from being in a comfortable place.
No, and I remember things like when we would take that Howard's Knob hike around the homecoming time. And, you know, I try to remember, you know, a lot of times, you know, there's the, you know, more athletic folks, they're charging up the hill on that big climb. But I'd always stay off the back. And, you know, the big victory for me was getting those one or two students up there who didn't really believe they could do it.
Yep.
You know, so they had such a victory on that day when we got everybody to the top. That's a hard 2-mile hike getting up there.
When you reach that halfway point, you think, oh, this is not so bad. But then you've reached that last 3/4 of the way up there, or that last quarter of the way up there, and oh my God, it pushed you.
Yeah. So we've had fun, you know, doing that. But I think so many students were able to realize, you know, and we always say inclusive. It was about everybody. You know, and I don't think I ever saw anybody mock anybody or think less of somebody, but to get people included, to think maybe someone who has never felt athletically inclined or felt like they could be with the in-group, you know, that did, but we would make sure everybody was part of whatever we did. That was so great, you know.
Always.
Always.
Yep. No one was ever left out.
No.
We always gave them that option. You can always go whatever route you choose, but like I said millions of times in our conversation today, you know, take that first step, and just see where it takes you. You'd be amazed.
Yeah. Well, I thank you. I thank you so much for the comments. You know, like I said, you know what this is about. I'm going to use this video, and hopefully, even though we're sort of virtual in a lot of ways, this would be something students could look at as we recruit for the new group and just say, hey, here's someone that's been there. And, you know, a quick little anecdotal view of how they remember their active living RLC experience.
Yep. There's so many memories. I can keep you here for hours on end, but I will say that the take home point here is that, to anyone who watches this, is to, you know, go for it, get a little uncomfortable, and I promise you will not regret it, because it's going to carry on for the rest of your life.
Yeah. How great. Well, thanks, Matt, for doing this. And I really appreciate it.